Okay, here's the dog, the squeaky toy.
Okay, it looks like we're good to go.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the November 11th meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation. We do have a quorum. So as vice chair, I'm just going to get us started while we wait for our chair to arrive. Ina, was there any public comment for TCDC?
No, we did not receive any public comment for this meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you. So it looks like our first item is the Business Accelerator Project. Heather or Chuck?
Okay, so some of you were present when we had Vincent Cozzolino and his team from Galileo Technology come in the spring, must have been in February, and talk to us about their accelerator projects that they're doing down in Orange County and other places of the state. We have followed up and had some stakeholder conversations, and Chuck is here just to ask for a little bit of funding to move forward with the next phase. If Chuck, you want to talk about that a little bit.
Thanks, Heather. Hi, everyone. So what's happened since is that we have we've held a SWAT with a group of stakeholders, interested thought leaders in the community to talk about the potential for a viable cluster of like-minded businesses that could be established here. There was a follow-up SWAT that zeroed in on a sort of a part of life sciences, namely assistive technologies, that is not a cluster that is being promoted in other parts of the state and other accelerators. And we talked further with Galileo Technologies about a 3-month pilot to investigate the potential for attracting companies in that sector, both within Tompkins County and without, and to plan for a virtual conference on the subject matter to generate buzz, to generate attraction. This is part of the formula that Galileo has used successfully in a number of other accelerators that they run across the state. So this 3-month pilot with monthly progress reports, a final report for which I'll be the point person for IAED, and we're looking for $20,000 to support staff time on Galileo's part to do that project. The next step will then be for us to decide if there's enough evidence to justify going ahead with the conference, and that would probably be a 12-month engagement. But right now, we're just asking for the 3-month pilot to put a toe in the water and see whether this has legs, to mix metaphors.
Thanks very much.
Take any questions, Martha?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chuck. Any questions or comments from the committee? Laura?
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Do you have a way of estimating the additional financial support that may be required beyond the 3-month pilot?
Well, if we use this as a guide, the staff time costs are, roughly $6,500 to $7,000 a month. They have engaged a local person here to be the Galileo rep, who presumably would continue. They also, historically with these other accelerators, have done a pretty good job of attracting additional funding. So it would not necessarily rest solely on TCDC. I can't guarantee that. That would obviously be revealed as we go forward. But the monthly, nut right now is $6,500 to $7,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Annie?
Thank you. So Chuck, does part, and you might have said this before when you did your presentations, so does part of your study looking at this, look at physical locations for it?
Yes, it does. So the deliverable at the end would be potential for attracting companies, the potential for a location, and
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's right in there. Sorry. Yep.
and
Okay.
then the planning of the conference, or sort of the three main points.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I was trying to get into a Google Meet. Was on the invitation. I don't know what I did wrong, but at any rate,
That was
welcome
a
everybody.
different party, Rich.
What's that?
That was a different and more fun party, so.
Ah,
Oh, we got started. We're already talking about the accelerator project.
okay. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry about
All
that.
right, I'll just finish up this topic. So you're saying if the pilot looks promising, it would be in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $84,000 for a 12-month contract to develop a conference?
No. The 3 month includes the planning of the conference. If we go forward, the conference would be held. Presumably, companies would be solicited. The location would be nailed down. A deal with in other instances, they've either purchased the property or leased the property. And also investigate other funding. For example, EDA has funding for accelerator growth slated for 2021, both for brick and mortar build out as well as operating expenses. So between you and me, I'm not expecting that TCDC would be on the hook for 100% of this. So it's hard to estimate exactly what the next request would be.
And
But it would seem you wouldn't just throw this away if, and you really want to be confident that the next bunch of money is something reasonable. Heather,
Absolutely. If we're not comfortable after the pilot, we have to obviously that's a go, no go decision again.
yeah, so my intention is that, once we identify if there are local participants, if there's interest from other companies in other areas to attract and locate here, if there's sufficient interest through the conference, that then we would put together the business case and the full plan for this accelerator project. And at that time, we would have a better understanding of what the long-term costs are and would start going out and trying to find federal and other state funding to help support it.
I would also add that in the other instances of the accelerator growth, rarely have they succeeded on the basis solely of companies that are native to that city. So the expectation is that this is part of our business attraction initiative, which I think is pretty exciting. Because it gives us something concrete to attract to.
sure, I understand. But the next page in our packet has the financial report, and I'm just looking at the dollars, and the 20,000 certainly is, is affordable. Another 80,000 or so is a bigger commitment, but I hear you. So, Rich, did you have any comments or questions?
No,
Right.
no. Again, I'm sorry for coming in late. I was sitting trying to get in.
Okay.
I'll follow up separately. Let's keep going.
Are there any other questions? Mike Sigler, I see you there. Is there anything on the accelerator?
No, it sounds good to me.
Okay. Heather, you want a motion to approve this?
Yes.
All right, somebody want to move that?
Sure.
Moved by John.
Sure, I'll move it. Or second.
All right. Everybody, it's unanimous. All right.
Unanimous motion.
Moved by John, seconded by Mike Sigler. All right. Anything else? Ready to vote? All right. Laura,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that passes. All right. Thank you very much. All yours, Rich.
Okay. So we were in the middle of the Tompkins County Development Corporation meeting.
Yes.
And I have no chair's report. Heather, do you have a staff report for the Development Corporation?
I just have the third quarter budget report in your packet. This is through September, if anyone has any questions on that.
Seeing none. Okay. All right. We have some meeting minutes from October 14th, 2020. Could I get that placed on the floor?
I'll move it.
Okay, Martha moves, Laura seconds. All right. Any questions or comments on the minutes?
I do have one comment.
Okay.
I had my own technology glitches on October 14th. I was at the meeting, but I had trouble connecting. So I could hear, and I believe you could hear me, but I couldn't get video connected. So I'm listed in the minutes as absent. However, I was present.
Let's make sure you were shown as there then. With that change, are we ready to vote? All those in favor, I'll work around the boxes here. Laura,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and we have somebody on the phone. Is that Jennifer?
It is. I
Okay,
just got here though.
okay. How do you feel?
Well, how
about
do you
our
wanna
minutes
vote,
of the
Jennifer?
Development Corporation meeting.
How do
from
I feel
October?
about the minutes? I feel great about the minutes.
I'm going to count that as a yes, and the chair votes
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so we have approved the
Critical issue.
minutes. All right, is there any other business to come before the Development Corporation?
Yeah, Rich,
Yeah,
in my packet, there's an email about required minimum distribution to retirement plans. Does anybody
I
else?
was hoping that was just in my copy, but I think that was accidentally included from our copy, or it's not Development Corporation related.
Okay,
Regard.
John?
thank you.
Yeah, before we close the meeting, I just had a quick question about reviewing the budget. I was looking at the ARC grant match. That's for the fiber to the Cayuga Data Juice, right? And it sounded like that grant actually did get funded. Is that accurate? I think we heard about that recently. And I'm wondering, when we originally looked at this back in April, there were some questions about, who ultimately ends up owning the fiber, and if there is a possibility that it could meaningfully support rural broadband in the area between here and there. And I'm wondering if there's been any further development on that issue, or if we could get an update, if not now, maybe in our next meeting, about any efforts to potentially leverage the infrastructure that's going to get built to expand broadband access in the affected region.
Yes, the grant was awarded and some preliminary work is being done on the grant now. A lot of those questions are still to be determined. It's a learning process for our staff. As we move forward, we want to make sure that we identify the potential structures and the best to benefit our community in terms of ownership. There have been some discussions about that additional connections for rural broadband along the line. And I'd be happy to have Kurt Anderson and Chuck Schwerin from IAED come and present on that at a future meeting. I
Yeah,
think
that'd be great.
in February, Kurt or Chuck, am I right in saying maybe in January you might have a little bit more information?
We better. Yeah. We're at the mercy a bit of the federal bureaucracy, and as you know, stuff's happening in Washington right now. So we're actually waiting on the USDA rural development for guidance as to when we will actually get what's called a grant approval. It's not a contract with them, it's a grant approval, but it will be coming from USDA soon. So yes, by January, we absolutely will have more information.
So
And
we'll
do we have
definitely put that on our agenda.
Okay. Do you have a timeline overall for the Cayuga Data Juice project? Is that seeming like it's on track, and do we know sort of when that's likely to come online?
So that obviously is not under our full control because Yuga Data Juice is in the process of, soliciting for anchor tenants for the data center. That's an ongoing process of which, we're not privy to that. We also are, and this is this is a national issue. There's an enormous amount of money that's being allocated for broadband across the country, which is going to put pressure on construction crews to actually do the work. We're in part of our discussions with potential partners to do the construction, we're asking them what their availability is and what their time frame should be, so that at least we'll know, what our time frame looks like, and hopefully that will dovetail with Yuga Data Juice.
Yeah, and we have been told, the grant was supposed to be a year timeline because of the glut of projects that are going to be in the pipeline. We are early on now being told that, there will be considerations for extensions. I have been in touch with the folks at Yuga Data Juice about monthly during the course of this year to understand their process and their milestones that they need to hit. And I'm confident that by sometime end of 2021, they'll be able to say, yep, we have all of our ducks in a row, we're a go, let's move forward. And hopefully that will dovetail with some of the early planning on the broadband line.
Cool. And do we have, I don't remember exactly where we're at with the pilot with the power plant. That was terminated, right?
The pilot was terminated by the county assessor's office because the property now is essentially valued at less than what the IDA's pilot had valued it at. So they're paying, their first property tax bill came in based on the new value, which is much lower than what we had in the pilot. And I am told that property taxes have been paid. With the new value, there is still an outstanding value. I know that they did have a meeting with the county assessment department and the county administrator to talk about how they might be able to structure some sort of a payment plan in the interim.
Okay. Anything further on that? All right. Anything further for the Development Corporation? Do I have a motion to adjourn? And Laura moves, John seconds. All those in favor of adjournment? I'm going to see a show of hands there, and I'll call on Mike and Jennifer because I can't see you. Everybody else is raising their hand.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And the chair votes yes, we are adjourned. And I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for Wednesday, November 11th, 2020. Welcome, everyone. And do we have any privilege of the floor? Heather, Ina?
Nothing was received for privilege of the floor.
Okay. I'll just put on the record that this is a problem, I think, with our remote format. We're just not, I believe, getting as much public comment as I would like, but that's the world we're living in at present.
Fortunately, read the comments on the Voice article, Rich.
What's that?
You just got to read the comments on the Voice article.
I guess we can go get comment, but we have to be more proactive, and we should be doing that. We should be trying to hear as much as we can. So we're not getting over the front of our skis. At any rate, let's proceed with the meeting. Are there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none. We have old business, Carpenter Park final approval. Heather, do you want to introduce that?
Sure. So Carpenter Park did receive their planned unit development approval from the city of Ithaca. Was it last night?
Last week.
November 4th.
So,
Yeah.
And we did hold a public hearing for all three of the projects that were submitted last Friday. Ina forwarded the public hearing minutes to everybody in advance of this meeting. And then you also have in your agenda packet the determination of financial need for both the medical office building and the mixed use building and the authorizing resolution. So at this point, they've met all of the requirements of the IDA, and I'm happy to take questions on the resolution or any of the other documents in the packet.
Well, why don't we put the resolution on the floor and then I'll take questions there. Can I get somebody to move it? Martha moves. I need a second. Laura seconds. Thank you. Okay. Heather, is there something further you want to say on the resolution?
I did just want to note, if anyone had read it with a fine tooth comb, there's some language in there about abandonment of facilities. That's legal statutory language for the IDA. Essentially, we had to notify the village and the town of Lansing that Cayuga Medical Associates would be moving the women's health facility down into this location. They're currently located at Craft Road, and it's a multi-tenant building with other medical offices. So we did send that notification out, but I know the language says abandonment of facility. It's not like they're going to leave and it'll remain vacant or anything like that. I just wanted to point that out in case anyone had noticed.
Okay, John, did you have your hand up?
I did, yeah. I want to address this issue, which has been, brought up now in both of our meetings about the consideration of this as one project versus three projects. And I think that, it's like in my thinking through how we're looking at this, we're sort of, I think that we're looking at it both ways when it's most convenient for the project. And I don't think that it's really fair or appropriate. If we considered the whole project to be one project, the increase in value that you would see from adding the affordable housing into the project would likely result in another $4.8 million in property taxes over the 30 years that abatement would go on. In addition, I mean, we're the abatement or the pilot that we're offering for the affordable housing really is, the sort of credit that you get for that part of the project being affordable. And I think that it's important that we, look at this as either one project, in which case, you take the value of the whole thing and you give it a 10-year financial need plus the enhanced energy and all of the things that they qualify for, or as three separate projects, and each one individually needs to qualify or needs to follow our policies. And I don't think that I don't mention the abatement on the affordable housing project to suggest we shouldn't do it. I think that that's a fantastic project. I think that the very generous incentives that we give to those projects are as we should do, because that's such a substantial community need. But to look at this particular project, which, if it were to follow our policy, specifically the market rate housing component would yield $830,000 in contribution to the county's affordable housing fund, which would fund another 119 units of affordable housing construction. I feel like this is such a tremendous community need. And I really think that we need to require it in this case. And you're going to be hearing the same thing from me about the Ithacan as we get a little later in the meeting. So I would like to propose that we amend this pilot to include the contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund. And I'll so move.
I'd like to second that.
Okay. Martha?
This is a really important point. I've been having trouble kind of going back and forth on how I'm supposed to think about these three projects. And then I see, there's one resolution to pass, but then, we have determination of financial need for two separate pieces. it does feel odd, I will say. So I will say that, what did you calculate was the payment to the housing fund, John?
I believe this project, the market rate housing component is 166 units. Is that correct?
Okay. So
That would be an $830,000 contribution, which would fund approximately 119 units of affordable housing if our ratios stay the same as they have been.
So John,
We're
just
gonna
for, I want to make sure I understand your amendment. You're saying treat them as three separate projects for purposes of calculating the affordable housing?
I'm saying specifically that we should apply our affordable housing policy, which is contribution of $5,000 per housing unit to the 166 units of market rate housing in the market rate housing project, which is one of three projects that we're considering right now.
My understanding, though, is that the affordable housing component, if you treat it as one project, would constitute, was it 20%?
It is, but the thing that you have to recognize is that if this was one project, those affordable housing units would contribute to the value of the project overall, and it wouldn't be subject to a 581A assessment, nor would it be subject to our enhanced half of 581A pilot agreement over 30 years. So basically, if you looked at this as one project, the value would be quite a bit higher. My back of the envelope math says that over the 30 years that we're offering a pilot on the affordable housing project, if that was just rolled into the bigger project, there'd be another $4.8 million in property tax revenue generated. So, I mean, you know, it's like if you're analyzing it as one project, it's like a very different picture because you don't get this separate 100% affordable, you know, very much enhanced abatement that we offer to those projects. So it's sort of like, you know, you've looked at it as one project when you're calculating whether or not we should apply our policy and, you know, and charge the $5,000 assessment, but looking at it as separate projects when you're asking how much should we charge in taxes for the affordable housing. And in both cases, you're taking the most favorable to the developer view, and they're at odds with each other. And I don't think we should do that. I think we should look at it one way or the other rather than, you know, both ways.
Okay, I have Ann, but Heather, do you have a clarification on that? I'm curious whether you took that into account in your math.
It is not unusual. I shouldn't say that. There have been instances in the past, and one very recent instance where we have applied separate pilots to the same project. The first being Ken Schoen's building on Green Street that included the parking garage on Cayuga Street, along with the building where Urban Outfitters is on the ground floor on Green Street. So
that was before we had any housing policy at all.
Right, and they were two separate pilots. There was a pilot for the commercial part of the garage. There was a pilot for the garage, and then there was a pilot for the Cinemapolis building and for the building on the other side of the street. So there are, in effect, I think 3 or 4 different pilots on one project with one project application. We've seen this with Asteri. It was one project. There are 3 separate pilot agreements based on the type of project. In talking to this applicant, we could have submitted it as one application. The application from Asteri is from 3 separate LLCs as the applicant. And it was just really a matter of semantics. Had we submitted it as one application, we would have likely had the same pilot scenarios because we're trying to achieve 3 different things. But the applicant made the determination that it was cleaner for them to submit as 3 separate ones. But you'll see even our council has provided one public hearing notice and one public hearing looking at it as one entire project. It was one planned unit development project approved through the city of Ithaca. And for tax credit purposes, they need to have their own subdivision, and it has to have its own ownership structure. So, that just sort of muddies the waters. But many of the larger projects that we've seen when we go to the closing table, there's lots of different entities involved. There's, lots of different things involved, and we make it work.
I mean, I'm not really.
John, hold up.
argu-
John, hold up. Let's take turns. Ann?
Thank you. So as John said, I mean, we're either going to look at this as 3 projects or 1 project. We had been looking at it as 1 project. And just because we had a public hearing or we've been considering everything that we've done, that we've considered it as 1 project up until now. Well, now it's three different projects. And so for instance, if we just took the contribution to the Community Housing Development Fund, if we say, okay, we're going to do a waiver. I mean, we're not even talking about that. Do we have some waiver that they're not going to do that because there's another, it's part of another project? We don't have that. And so to not do that for the first project that comes up, I don't see how we can, rationalize that. It's not, I don't see that as some policy that we have just because we've been considering it, as 1 project. And as John said, to me, this amounts to double dipping. Like, okay, I'm going to take all the advantages of, for us, just take it from the IDA, that we're going to take all the advantages of 1 project, and then we're going to split it into 3, and then take all the advantages that come with it being 3 projects. And I'm not comfortable with that, and I don't think it's correct. And in this particular manner, the way it is now, I would vote against that. And I definitely think we need to either split it up or do something different than we're doing now.
Okay, Martha?
I would have to agree. And I think this is, for one thing, the Affordable Housing Project is applying for low-income tax credit benefits. We don't know if they'll get that approval. And if they don't get that approval, then what happens? Do we know whether the project's going to be built anyway, and built as what? So to use the affordable apartment building as the qualifier on the mixed use and why they don't have to pay into the housing fund, there are a lot of questions there. So, and the Ken Sean's precedent, that was I think that was even a different IDA density policy when we did that. That was years ago. So it seems like Asteria is more relevant, but that's just 1 building. So it feels like that's more clearly 1 project. In this case, each of the separate buildings can be built without the other one. So, and I would say if the State Street project, I can't remember the names. So the State Street project is requesting not the Ithaca, whichever one, wants to pay the housing fund amount over 3 years. I'm fine with that. I think we actually said that in the Housing Policy Committee, that if a developer needed to stretch it out, that would be fine. So I would understand 830,000 is a big number. If that needs to be stretched out, if the applicant needs to go back and, back next month, that'd be fine too. But
could I have a chance to speak if that's possible? And I don't know what the appropriate time is, but
Yeah.
I'd like to.
Yes, I will give you a chance in just a second. Martha, are you done?
just one other thing, and it's related to all of these that are asking for determination of financial need. The question about annual return on investment, that our benchmark is 20% in each of the first 5 years. Anything less than 20, up to 20% shows financial need. I think the IDA should reconsider that 20%. That's a very high percentage. That's not really, we're obviously, that's the policy that exists. I'm also curious as to why we're getting the determination of financial need now after the public hearing. Seems like we should have had this going into the public hearing.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get an answer on that. I wanted to jump in and then I'd like to give the developer a chance to comment. I'm uncomfortable with this.
Sorry, Rich, I just wanted to, I'm not sure how to get in line from being on the phone, but I just wanted you to
Can you
know
raise
that
your-
I was thinking something also.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, can you raise your hand? Are you able to open the participants or no?
There's no way to do that other than to be on mute or unmute. So
Jennifer, why don't you go ahead right now then?
I was happy to wait until you were done. I just wanted you to know I was in line.
Okay, I know you're there. I know you're there.
Thanks. Okay.
John, I'm uncomfortable with doing this and doing this now. We have to approve projects in the world that we live in. And there really isn't a way to build the different types of uses here, it's my understanding, without having separate corporate entities, particularly for the affordable housing component because of the tax credit issue. The developer didn't create that system. That's where we all are. And all I've heard for a long time is that we want an affordable housing component, and they've met that. 20% of the housing is affordable housing, if you look at it as one project. If we change the rules now, they're well along in their development. I imagine it changes the math pretty substantially on whether this is a viable project. Maybe not. Maybe there's enough extra in there that they could just absorb that kind of payment. But that strikes me as something we should have probably told them a long time ago if we're changing how we're going to look at this project. And I worry that we're going to face all of this all over again with the conference center project. I don't see how that's different in any other project where there have to be different components. Anyway, I'm uncomfortable. Jennifer.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for calling on me. Rich, I just wanted to sort of echo your concerns. I feel this has come up a few times and that we've talked through it in prior meetings. And I understand sort of the struggle of, is it one project, is it three projects? And I can see looking at it that way. And I think one of the questions I would ask is, if we did look at it as an entire project, are we getting the number of affordable housing units delivered that we would expect to have delivered? And for me, the answer to that is yes. And I guess one question I would have is, if the developer weren't trying to deliver those affordable housing units, would we be getting any? Or, if they weren't trying to have those two buildings meeting the goals of the IDA and the community by building those units, I mean, maybe we would be getting a payment into the housing fund, but I don't know if those units would be being built at all. And I guess the only other question I had was whether really our policy was fully in place and 100% adopted when we first were having these conversations with the project and when they were crafting their application to us, because I think that also is something worth considering. So, maybe there's some middle ground, maybe there's some optional, smaller than the 800 to some thousand that John's back of the envelope calculated, contribution into the housing fund that would satisfy folks' requirements. I don't know, but I'm not in favor of changing the way we're looking at the project at this stage of the game after the public hearing's already been held. Thank you.
Okay. John, I see you, but I'd like to give the developer a chance to speak. Is it Tim?
Well, this is Andy.
Andy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I think that, we've spent probably about 3 years now moving this project through the process. And before we even started formal meetings with the city, we had numerous informal meetings with the city, with the neighborhood organizations near our site, with community stakeholders. And we initially did not have an affordable component to our project. One of the things that the mayor and other city leaders asked us to look hard and try to work toward was to include an affordable project in our project within this within this, on this site. We did that. We've now spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and several years working through that process with the city. It's all contained within a PUD that requires the affordable units. And this project is, the intent behind it was to create affordable on a site that also has market rate. I'm not aware of any other developer that's done this recently within Ithaca, where they have a market rate project and are putting affordable housing units right adjacent to it. We did it because that was the city's vision, and we work closely with them to accomplish that. And I know Laura's on here, and I think she can speak to the work between us and our team with Cayuga Med and our consultants and the city, and coming to this as being the best possible solution. We completed the seeker process in May. We could have clearly raced in to get that done and try to receive the pilot before you put this new policy in advance, this new policy in place. We clearly didn't think that there was an issue because we provided 20% of affordable units on our site, which is more than anybody's ever done. I would think that there's a huge, much greater value on 42 units of affordable housing being built than getting $800,000. I have to tell you, the cost of building an affordable housing unit in New York State already, what we've incurred in submitting the application 3 times and doing all that work. I'm not even talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars we have into the approval process at the city with our consultants, but our time, for which we have been not compensated in any way thus far. So I think it would be highly unfair and to try to change the rules midstream. But I also think it's not a good message you're sending, because you're discouraging developers. If you want to do it the way you're suggesting, or that John is suggesting, you're discouraging developers like us who do develop affordable and market rate from wanting to offer affordable. It just complicates it. So we've gone above and beyond and tried to do what the city wanted us to do. We're committed to doing that. There's one PUD. The PUD contains the requirement for affordable. It speaks to the effort we have to put in to get the affordable. We negotiated for a long period of time with the city and the PEDC committee on what that language should be within the PUD. That took several meetings. It was approved, and all that is contained within the PUD. And so we're delivering what the city wanted. I know the city's on board. It passed unanimously at the PEDC. There's a lot of support for it with the mayor and council. And so we're trying to deliver what the city wants. And I think to the contrary, we'd be being punished for offering to deliver affordable units and having to pay a fee. And quite frankly, we're not going to do both. So.
Okay, let's, I know John wants to speak. Laura, you haven't spoken yet. Ann, is your hand still up, or is that a new hand up?
It's up again.
Okay, let's go in order. John, Laura, Ann.
Yeah, I just want to, be clear that, first off, I do think this is a good project. And, I appreciate that you're trying to put these two uses next to each other. I think that there is a lot to like here. The issue that I have is essentially that, because it's been divided into two, you've been granted a much larger incentive for specifically the affordable component than you would have if they were in one place. So if this was one project and the 20% was a part of a bigger picture, your assessed value of that overall building would be large enough that, first off, you wouldn't get a 581A. You have to be 100% affordable for that. And we're giving you sort of half of that at the same time. So it's sort of it's the doubling of the incentives, not the actual separation. I see lots of reasons to do pilots as multiple different ways. We've got another one on the agenda today where we're talking about separating the parking garage from the apartment building, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's I don't see any reason to question dividing projects up into different pieces for pilot reasons. It's really the issue is that, we've essentially already delivered an incentive on the affordable housing, and to fail to enforce this policy in this case is essentially delivering two incentives for the same community benefit, which I really take issue with. And I think to Ann's point that I want to reinforce, because these are actually separate projects, we really do have to, like, we have a policy that we are, if we move forward in this way, are not following, because the mixed use project would not pay into this fund, nor does it in itself contain those 20% units. So I mean, you know, we need to follow our policy and our process on, if we're going to not implement that, we need to notify the taxing jurisdictions, et cetera, but it should be in our agenda that it's a deviation from our policy. So, I mean, there's just more work to do here to get this cleaned up.
Okay, Laura.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I think this is a really good discussion. I have to say I agree with Jennifer and with Rich that I'm uncomfortable with changing things. After the public hearing, we have discussed this project. This is a project that brings tremendous benefit to the city of Ithaca. And it is a very, we've talked about this in the past as well, it's a very challenging site. The reality that we will have a building of 42 affordable units is something that the whole community, the city, the county has been in favor of and has been encouraging. The developers have been very responsive and responsible in meeting with the neighborhood, the city, the community gardens. There are just tremendous benefits. I hear what you're saying, John and Ann, but at the same time, I'm uncomfortable having the discussions that we have had over months. And Andy talked about, you know, discussions that have been taking place over 3 years and the investment that the developer has made in this very challenging project. And there has been a lot of concession the developers have made as this project has developed. But I'm uncomfortable changing the game now in midstream for the developer. Listen, I want to get as much affordable housing as possible, and I think getting these 42 affordable units is a great benefit to the community.
Okay, Ann.
I also agree with the part that Laura was saying about changing the game. So last meeting, so people are saying that it wasn't brought up. John and I brought this up at the last meeting. We had public comment about it at the beginning of the last meeting. This was all before the forum. It was also, and John and I, our comments and our concerns about this were not included in the minutes of the last meeting, which I'm going to want added. So we did bring this up, and so to me, that's not a moot point. We brought it up as soon as we knew the project was going to be split into 3. So this is different than all along being told that it was going to be split up into 3. So we were considering it as one. And if you consider it as one, then we would have to go back and not have different tax abatements for the different parts of the project. It would be one tax abatement. And then, as John stated, I don't know the numbers, but you know, they could be paying millions more if it was considered one project. So we can't, I mean, just legally, I don't think we could even do that, is take one part of something that we like and one part of another thing that's going to benefit the project, which is, we all agree that it's a wonderful project, but we can't pick and choose. I don't even think that's legal to do. So it's either one project or 3, and we can't keep flip-flopping back and forth. Thank you.
Martha.
Thank you. I mean, we could go back to the recording. These meetings are recorded and you keep the recordings, right? I know, or Heather. So yes, we'd spent a lot of time at the last meeting trying to understand, is this 1 or 3? We had public comment. We had public comment at the hearing. If we don't allow ourselves to change our decision or to change a project based on public comment, then why bother having public comment? We are not the city. We've said many times, just because the city passes something doesn't mean it becomes IDA policy. So we appreciate and understand the tremendous amount of work that's gone into this. I agree, this is a great project. I've met you know, with some of the developers and the hospital, it seems like years ago. So I understand how much work has gone into this. I am, and I really I love the project. It's great, but this is a real issue. The issue of, was the housing policy in place when conversations were happening or when the application came in? We adopt a policy, and following that adoption is when subsequent applications must meet that policy. If the application had come to us in March, instead of after we adopted the housing policy, then it wouldn't apply. But we did adopt the policy, and there's a date certain. So I think this is a completely legitimate question. I still haven't heard a question. What happens if the affordable housing project doesn't get the tax credits? This is the third time they've applied.
Yeah, I believe we've said we're committed to getting it done. We have a long track record of successfully completing affordable projects, I believe, as you know. I believe you don't have the zoning code right in front of me, but my recollection is that we would have to go back before council and then at that point either pay a fee or have some other way of offsetting the benefit of the affordable, which is a key component of the PUD. It was envisioned as one project. There are clearly 3 separate LLCs. That's the way real estate is done. It's just a fact. Real estate is separately. Single asset entities are the way that real estate is developed. In particular, as Heather previously mentioned, you cannot develop affordable housing without a separate LLC that only owns that single asset entity. And the tax credit investor cannot invest in something that has other aspects to it. And so that's the whole reason this is done this way. And quite frankly, it's a disincentive to want to offer affordable housing from my perspective as a developer if the rules are changed at this point and we aren't considered meeting the requirement. Nobody else has done this. We wouldn't even have to do this. We did it because we agreed to work with the city to come up with a solution. So,
Okay.
Listen,
Hold on, Martha.
I'm not finished.
Martha, hold on.
I'm not finished.
Well, one person.
I still didn't get an answer to my question.
All right.
Housing,
Okay, I thought you were done.
no, if the tax credit
you know where
doesn't get approved, it's not up to the city to provide the millions of dollars to make that building affordable. How is this going to get built if the tax credit application doesn't get approved? I'm chair of the Program Oversight Committee of the Housing Fund. Heather's on the fund, Anna's on the fund, Laura's on the, no, Laura's not, I'm sorry. But we know how this works, and this project has gone the third time now waiting for its approval. And if it, I don't know that any project has ever gone 4 times to try to get approval. If the tax credits don't come through, what will you do?
Well, there's been many projects that have gone 4 or 5 times.
Okay, what will you do?
But Martha, if I can interrupt for a second. Hold on, Andy. Andy, can you hold on?
Sure.
It seems like our job is to determine whether to grant a tax abatement or not. If there's no affordable housing component, it seems like they wouldn't be meeting the requirements for the tax abatement. So from our standpoint, as we sit on this committee, they would lose the tax abatement, at least the portion of the benefit related to affordable housing. Is that right, Heather? I think that's the answer to the
Would
question.
be my assumption. If the project doesn't happen, if it in its entirety, the IDA can make a determination that it wants to terminate a pilot, recapture incentives. I think the easiest way to go forward would be to add language in the closing documents that if the affordable doesn't happen, then the project applicant would need to, in lieu, pay that fee.
Okay, all right. And not to put you on the spot, Mike, but we've heard from all of the IDA members on this issue, but we haven't heard from you. I'm very curious where you stand on this.
Mike, do you know you're on mute?
No, I didn't. Maybe that's why he hasn't heard from me on it.
He's been muted this whole time.
No, I'm of two minds of the whole thing. I was really kind of deferring to the committee to kind of put my thoughts together, and I'm gonna, I think, continue to do that for a while. Yeah, I don't really have much to add on it, Rich. I'm sorry.
Okay. Heather,
So in all fairness, in the probably 2.5 years that I've been talking to the applicant about this project, the discussion has been about it being one project. It was always a discussion as being one project. And I just want to point out that if the affordable housing project were looked at on its own, it would be eligible for a 581A tax payment. So if they looped it into this project and paid full taxes on it, it financially likely would not be viable. I don't think it's fair to say that they would be paying taxes on a fully taxable project, because they would be receiving that tax treatment. So what we're looking at here at the IDA, the incentive on the affordable housing project, is $700,000 over 30 years is projected, the difference between the 581A tax payment and what the IDA would be delivering. So it wouldn't be millions, it would be $700,000.
okay. Well, I think everybody's been heard.
I would just say I would be fine with the resolution containing a provision if we don't get funded, but with the affordable that we pay the fee. I get it. We're not saying we want to try to get away without having to do something to contribute to affordable. We're just offering to actually build units, 42 really nice units that will mix with market rate apartments as well, and be part of a spot where there's new jobs at the medical office building, beyond just, which I think is a much greater benefit beyond just paying the fee. But if we can't get funded, and we are very persistent and we will feel confident we'll find a way to get funded, but if we can't, we're happy to have in there that we will pay the fee.
Okay. Laura,
Yeah, Andy, could you just share with us once again the timeline on next submission?
Yeah, what I heard recently is that sometime in the next couple weeks, HCR will be releasing a new funding round, and that there will be a submission in January. It should be known as well that this last funding round had exceedingly limited resources. They had about $10 million. And as with everything else right now going on, understandably so, the governor is not putting out a lot of resources until he understands where New York State's budget will be, what the gap's going to be, and what the federal government will provide in terms of assistance. My guess is, given some of the results in the last week or so, and the hope that there will be some more assistance for New York State from the federal government, the next funding round may have a little more resources available. But there were only about 8 projects funded statewide last round. Typically there's about 30. So it was very limited, and we're hopeful and optimistic. We do plan to put this back in. The agency has a favorable view on it now. They spent a lot of time talking to us about the site and the benefits of it, and all the things that I think that we talked about at the city, and sort of getting, everyone needs to sort of get their head around why this is such a good site. And it is, because there are some reasons, if you just look at it on the periphery, you might say maybe that's not so great. But if you understand all the benefits, and they have now, from our discussions with them, the state really likes it. So we do feel confident that it will get done eventually. And we're disappointed that it hasn't yet, but we're ready to go back in and submit it again. So we're hopeful that January there will be a submission, and we plan to submit it in that round.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in and make a second comment. I apologize. Usually I only try to talk once, but I think that if we're uncomfortable with this as an IDA, and this is our policy, we should take this back and we should determine, what do we want to do? this feels really like a curveball thrown at the last minute. And you can say, you know, well, we can interpret our policy this way, but our policy apparently isn't clear. You know, John, I know we can argue about this for a long time, but they didn't understand
Raising
it.
my hand because I'd like to speak, Rich.
I'll call on you. I'm taking a turn. The developer didn't know this, didn't understand it, and has done a ton of finance work. Adding $800,000 of cost at the last minute, you can't just absorb that into a project. That's a significant change. And if we're going to ask them to do it, we should have been crystal clear, and we're not. We just aren't. That burden, I believe, is on us. You know, it calls to mind Library Place and the Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission. You know, with all worthy intent, I believe Travis Hyde had to go in front of them 8 times. That's not how we want to see development projects proceed in our community. You know, we want to be tough, but we also want to be fair. And this is, the more I think about it, it's just, this isn't fair. So I'm going to vote against this amendment. And let's see, I had Martha and John, you both wanted to talk again? Go ahead, whoever.
Yeah, I understand this feels like a curveball, but we did say when we put the housing policy together, we wanted to try it for a year and see how it went. So this is some of the feedback, but this is unique. We haven't had a project like this where you got 3 completely different pieces that are separable, and where one part of it is getting the 30-year abatement, but those units are also being used as credit for the other part of for another part of the project. So this is different, and it would be helpful if the applicants could acknowledge that we're being asked to do something unusual. I would like to ask that if there is language, let's say John's amendment doesn't go through, then we're back to the original motion. And I would ask that if there's language, if we're saying that if the affordable housing doesn't get the tax credit approvals that it needs, then there will be the fee. We need a timeline on that because—
Well, Martha, if I don't mean to interrupt you, but can we have an amendment on the floor?
Right, you don't like us to talk multiple times, so I'm throwing it in.
I know, but we should do this in order so that if the amendment fails, let's bring that amendment and we can talk about it then. Yeah. You have more?
No.
Okay, John.
I want to react to this sort of sense of that, like, you know, we're doing this at the last minute all of a sudden. And I think that, you know, Ann's point is important. The very first opportunity that we as a board had to see how this abatement would be structured was at our last meeting. And, you know, we raised this issue at our last meeting. So, you know, from my perspective, I think it's important to recognize that, you know, from the very first moment that we had opportunity to comment on this structure, you know, this has been the comment. And I think that it's sort of, it's not really fair to suggest that, you know, all of a sudden we're changing things at the last minute when what we're asking to do is to implement the policy that we've spent years trying to put together. You know, similar to that, this project has been in conversation for a long time, but just finally came to an amendment. Our affordable housing policy has been in conversation for years, the whole time I've been on this board, and just finally came to a policy. So it shouldn't be surprising to anyone that that was coming. And I think that, you know, we've been consistent in considering this issue. And I don't think it's really fair to say otherwise.
John, our policy, you're right, has been negotiated in the open. I think the curveball and the surprise is, why don't you pay an extra $800,000? That I think is a surprise to the developers today. That's where I think their concern is.
But that just came out. I mean, that was not included only 2 months ago. Not, you know, I mean, right? Like, as you work through these projects, your structure is constantly changing. And I mean, also I have to say, you know, object to the suggestion as a developer personally, that, a project of this scale couldn't absorb a payment of that size as a percentage of the total development costs across this project. It's not as big of a number as you might think. But
Okay.
the community value of that contribution, if, past performance holds, we'd be seeing 119 additional units of affordable housing built in our community because of this contribution, which is not in any way insignificant. And I mean, I've had conversations with INHS actually, speaking to my contacts there about this specific project. I'm sort of like, well, look, I know that that resource is always tapped. If there was, if there was more money in there, is there the demand for the projects? And they said that absolutely yes, there is. So I think that we certainly, it's great to see these 42 units. It's great to give them a healthy incentive for those 42 units, as we are proposing to do. But I really think that we should consider the larger picture of our community. And
Okay, Jennifer.
I know we have an amendment on the table, so I'm not sure what the proper course of business is, but my feeling right now is that either we should put this to a vote and see if there's a majority to clear the project, or we need to table it. I don't think this is healthy or appropriate to be making all these changes during a meeting and continuing to have this discussion here. If there's additional negotiations or changes to how we're structuring this incentive package, I think we need to have that outside of this meeting. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so are you calling the question?
I guess I am.
Okay, do I have a second to call the question?
Rich, I think, when you call the question, you can't make other comments and then call the question. You just have to raise your hand and call a question. But I think we're probably ready to vote.
Okay, let's go to that. Ready to vote. Anybody else? Last minute? Okay. This is on the amendment to the resolution. And I'll just go around the boxes as I see them. Laura,
No.
Anne,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
Jennifer,
No.
and the chair votes no. Okay, so the amendment to the resolution does not pass. Martha, did you have an amendment?
Yeah, first a question. I'm still confused, and this comes up in a couple applications. How do it feels like we're stacking the economic need benefit and the enhanced energy benefit. Like you can't get the same 100%. Heather, can you explain that?
So the financial need gives you a 10-year incentive. Otherwise, there's a 7-year incentive.
Okay.
And when we passed the energy policy, we did provide for a scenario where you could get the enhanced energy incentive with the 7-year abatement, or you could get the enhanced energy abatement with the financial need with the 10-year abatement. And there's also, it further splits between a large multifamily housing project or a large project that is not multifamily. There's different schedules, and it's all in our uniform tax exemption policy.
Okay, and why did we not get the enhanced, the economic analysis before we went to public hearing? Should that have been part of the whole application?
I looked back. I have done my memos at the beginning and at the end over time. It's usually based on my workload. I've always received all the financial information. I've gone through all the financial information prior to the full application being submitted, but it's just a matter of timing when the benefit memo, the financial need memo comes.
Okay, I guess since it seems part of the package, it'd be helpful when we get the full package before the public hearing. So at any rate, thanks for those questions, those answers. So the amendment I would make is, and Andy, you said if you don't get the tax credit approval, you're going to keep trying. However, we have to establish a pilot by date certain. And I guess I don't know how, what is the right timeline? And it takes forever for the state to make these decisions, and we have no ability to rely on their schedule. So I don't know how exactly to structure this, but I don't feel comfortable waiting forever. And you guys have to go ahead and build what you're going to build. And if you don't, right? Heather,
The abatement amount doesn't kick in until the project is completed. So, if the mixed use project starts to be built, that's going to take 2 years to build. We're going to know by then if the affordable is going to move forward. Like if it's not, we'll pull the abatement before.
Well, we pay the fee, right? I mean, we think, so right now it's the first phase to start will be the medical office building, and that's likely in the spring. And some point thereafter, within say several months thereafter, we would start the mixed use. And as you said, Heather, two years, maybe it's 18 months to 2 years for the mixed use to then get built thereafter. And if we haven't built or we haven't been funded by the state at that point, I guess we'd have to, come back to you or pay the fee based on the number of units. Can I just ask, what is the fee again per unit, if you don't mind?
$1,000.
It's $5,000 times the total number of units in the project.
In the market rate project.
So if you hold it, 150 units, it'd be $830,000.
All right, my amendment is going to be that as of June 2021, if the low-income project has not gotten the go-ahead, then the IDA will then the housing fee would be applied. But you could ask for an extension, but I want to make this a certain thing and not, I want the default to be that as of June 2021, say June 30th, 2021, the housing, affordable housing project is either going ahead or the fee is applied. So I'll make that motion. All right.
John seconds. Could I ask a question of Andy? Is that a reasonable time period? Do you think you can get the credits by then?
I think it's hard to say. I think that if they do have applications due in January, they may well make announcements prior to that, but that would really only give us one more chance to obtain the credits. The unfortunate part is that the state about, I don't know, a little over a year ago made the decision to go to 2 funding rounds per year. Well, because of the pandemic, that has not yet been able to be implemented. So their goal in 2021 is to have 2 full funding rounds. So I would ask that we at least be able to have through 2021, through the end of the year, to have the full value of the funding rounds in 2021 at a minimum. But
okay, Martha?
Yeah, if I can just explain, I would like this body to be the one, this group of IDA members to be the group that looks at this again. I worry that if this goes over even a further, and I don't know if all of us are going to be members next year even. So, but the longer this goes, then, the more likelihood you have a whole new crop of members. As I said, my amendment would include the ability to ask for an extension. I think we'll know a lot more by next July. I mean, if you haven't gotten, saying June 30th means we're going to talk about this at the July meeting. And I understand, I know all the projects as head of the POC of the fund, I know all the projects that are in the pipeline. This is a very competitive program. We have a lot of projects from Tompkins County, and at the most we get 2, and it's usual that we get 1 a year. So I think next July would be a fair time for a reality check. So that's my proposal. And, and as I said, we can ask for an extension and we'll talk about it in July.
Okay. Jennifer has a hard stop, so we should probably get her view on this in terms of a vote. Do we want to vote on the amendment as is? Does anybody want to propose moving the date? Right, we've got it moved and seconded. Laura?
Oh, sorry, I was going to ask, I hear what Martha's saying, but I was going to ask if this could be the end of 2021, December 2021 instead. Okay.
That's what I said. I don't think, we may not know everything by July, but we'll know a lot more than we know right now.
I
You may
would
not.
certainly be in favor of the end of 2021. We're not going to have a change in the composition of the IDA during 2021.
Right, but if it's the end of 2021, then you're talking about the 2022 IDA.
It depends when the funding cycle is finished, but perhaps you're right. I'm still tending to go towards more time. Are we ready to vote on the amendment? Looks like we are. Jennifer or Laura?
No.
Hey, Ann,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
Jennifer.
The amendment, again, being if we don't receive approval for the housing project by a certain date, there would be a payment into the housing trust fund.
Right, by
Yes,
June
right.
30th. Yeah.
With the ability for the applicant to ask for an extension.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair votes no. I believe the amendment passes. All right. Are we ready to vote on the full resolution? Any further amendments? We've certainly had our chance to talk. Ann?
Because we've a number of issues that have come up, I'm going to make a motion to table this while we negotiate some more.
What would be further negotiated?
The IDA tax abatement awards for each project, or whether to consider it as one project. I'm still not convinced that we're
Okay.
considering this.
Okay, does this have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, John seconds. Do we have discussion or we want to vote on it? Does everybody understand what Ann is saying, is that we will adjourn and effectively just push this off till a later meeting? Okay,
Might give us-
Sorry,
Can
quick
I just-
question. Quick question. If we do that, is the most recent amendment then stricken from the record?
No, this
yeah, I
was,
think we'd have to consider extending the deadline, but that's a different question, I think, than Ann has put before us.
but the
Well, there's
amendment
been,
the
this is
amendment is
Russ,
now,
real quickly, there's been a number of motions and seconds, but there's been nothing resolved. So Jen, to answer your question, unless the second amendment, if I have it correctly, is presented and approved, that would not be considered adopted. So as
Yeah,
of,
but- I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
the amendment was approved, so it becomes part of the main motion.
correct,
Annie is just proposing to table the whole thing, which includes
correct.
the main motion as amended.
Right, so that means you come back whenever it's at the board's leisure and give it a fresh look or start from the second amendment. So it would be at the board's discretion if everything is tabled at this point to do what it wants at a future date. And if I could just say one quick thing, and then I know you've been talking about this for quite some time. I think part of the confusion comes from, and I'll put aside the dollars and cents because that's up to the business people, which is this board and the developer, comes from the fact that there were 3 applications. And so you can call it 1 project or 2 projects or 3 projects. As far as memorializing what the business deal is, be it the pilot, the sales tax, the mortgage recording tax, and how it's paid, we can get that reflected in a set of documents. So I think to me, the confusion is more, okay, what did we agree to from a business deal perspective versus what can we do legally? So I'll stop there, but you can table, and that means you start anew, or you can adopt the second amended resolution as presented by Martha, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Are we ready to vote on Ann's motion to table? Laura,
No.
Ann,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
No,
Jennifer,
No.
and the chair votes no. So it doesn't pass. And I think we're ready to vote on the actual resolution as amended. Are we? Any further comments, questions? All right, I will call the roll, and I'm going to do it in the order on the resolution. Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Mike,
yes,
Ann,
No.
John,
No.
Laura,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. I think that's 4-3. It passes. Okay. Well, that was quite a discussion.
Say 5-2, wasn't it?
It was 5-2.
5-2. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and this is Russ. Heather, before I forget, maybe you and I can make sure we're understanding everything that was approved today and is accurately reflected in the documents, and then we can send that to the board to make sure that it's, again, accurate. So that will come in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. And it does seem like there is some further discussion we as an IDA should probably have on articulating our policy, so we are clear as to what we're presenting to potential applicants. But one person's opinion. All right. Any other business regarding Carpenter Park, Heather?
No.
Okay. Thank you for attending. You're welcome to stay, but we'll move on. We have new business, the emergency COVID-19 grant approvals. And I believe those came out in an email earlier. Was it today, Heather?
Yes, so last month, the IDA did approve this emergency grant program. And with that resolution approving that program, that Ithaca Area Economic Development staff would review applications for eligibility and make recommendations to this body. I did forward the applications if anyone wanted to see them, along with a spreadsheet with recommendations, which I'm just going to share on the screen here.
And while you're doing that, I'd like to say thank you to Chuck for your work on this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Work is still ongoing.
Are there more applications coming in?
Yes, sir.
In the interest of time, I would move the whole package.
I'll second that.
Oh, before I can even find it.
Well, let me just ask, has everybody had a chance to look at the applications? Yes? Does anybody have questions regarding the applications? Martha?
I thought they were great, creative, and I'm looking at it now, and I hope Anna can print all this and mail it, at least to me. I like to get the paper. Chuck, you said you have more coming?
I've had 9 inquiries, 6 applications. I've finished, to my satisfaction, 4 that I put forward, and there are 2 that are still under review, and I expect we may hear from more.
So you're reviewing 2 more. You had 9 inquiries in the beginning.
So 3 may, of those 9, I expect maybe those additional 3 will submit. I don't have them in hand yet.
All right, and so we approved 100,000, is that right?
Right, and with these 4, we're 33 and change, I think.
Right.
So we've got some room to run.
Yes, and I see that it looks like you approved the full amounts requested up to $10,000.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one is, I think, $22 off, but I'm sticking to what I was told.
I was curious, you reduced a couple of them. Why did you reduce those applications?
You mean the amount that was
Awarded.
recommended?
Yeah.
Well, the Ithaca Community Child Care Center just was reduced to 10,000 because that's the max. The others, and the same thing with Coddington Road, 10,000 is the max that I was directed. So the others are what they asked for.
Okay.
Now, I will say that I am looking at another one which may be recommended, but I don't have enough information yet. And in that case, I am not necessarily suggesting 100% simply because I'm looking at whether the requested purchase truly does follow the letter and the spirit of what you passed.
Okay. Any other questions? Anne?
Thank you. So regarding so this is for purchases after they receive the grant, not retroactive. And so do they have to submit receipts for this?
Yes, they do.
Okay, I must have just missed it in the application. Okay, great. Thank you. I do
have
like,
asked everyone if they have received other COVID-related incentives. And in these 4 cases, all have and all used for payroll.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? I note that Jennifer Tavares had another engagement and had to leave the meeting. So there's 6 of us remaining. Laura,
Good. I got
Yes.
Anne,
yes.
Martha,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous. And again, thank you for your work on this. This is really critical, I think, to our community to get the daycare assistance out there. So,
You're welcome.
okay. And Anne, did you have another comment? I see your hand up. Nope. Okay.
No.
Next on the agenda is the Lansing Market Pilot Amendment Request. And I see we have Andy Sharaba with us. Welcome. Welcome, Mr. Sharaba.
Thanks,
Good
Rich.
to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
So we have in the agenda packet requesting an extension of the abatement to allow for additional years at the current percentage abatement. We've also got a letter of support from the town of Lansing to essentially freeze this abatement level for a period of time based on the track record of the market itself that has had a number of setbacks early on that were out of their control. And they're looking at ways to cut their costs just moving forward until the project is financially feasible. And I'm sure Andy can speak to that. This project was financed by a group of Lansing residents that very much wanted to see a grocery store in their community as a place where the community could be and could shop. And so they put funding in to make that project work. And every year since it's been open, they have contributed additional funding to cover shortfalls in the project.
Okay. And Andy, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, Rich, we appreciate what the IDA has given us in the past. And basically, we are currently paying about $15,000 a year in taxes based on the current level of exemption. And also, I'd add that we generate about $90,000 to $100,000 a year in sales tax revenues, which go here through the state, here through the county. So we are contributing, which is unusual for normal IDA projects to contribute sales tax revenues from operations. Basically, it's a tough business, Rich. Basically, very low margins. We have constantly increasing costs. Basically, minimum wage has been going up over a 5-year period of time. It's actually paying higher than the minimum wage to all of our employees, especially during the COVID situation. We're taking additional risk working in an essential business. We just now have more regulations coming down regarding family leave policy, which we have to grant them time off for employees, pay time off for employees. So these are additional costs. The revenues just don't generate the level to cover these costs. So we've had to put money in every year, and we continue to do so. Like I said, we're advancing residents. There's 4 partners in this right now. I'm a majority partner. And we would be more than happy to pay taxes, but basically we're just asking for additional 4 years of freezing the current level so we can hopefully generate more revenues down the road and start paying more tax. That's kind of the summary of the situation. But the competition increases every day, unfortunately. So there's another Dollar General being planned for basically just at the north border of the Tompkins County on 34. So it'll put us between 2 Dollar Generals, which makes it even more difficult. Yeah.
Okay, Martha.
So I'm clear on this. So the existing payment is 64%. This would just take it out another 4 years, right?
Yes.
First about the childcare program, I think Margaret should do a press release. I think it's a great program, and IAED should get some good story press on that. On this one, I would like to move acceptance of the request. I think this has been a great project, and Ed Levine doesn't give up taxes very, easily. So his support letter is really is a testament.
Okay, do we have a second? Laura seconds. Okay. And John, you're up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really, I gotta I think this is a fantastic project. Andy, you had a successful first career. I don't know why you went into such a tough business, but I'm glad you did. I think that it's a huge benefit to the community to have the Lansing market there and have a local option for groceries right there. The only concern I have here is that we've seen a number of these kinds of requests coming specifically from the hotels when their market got overbuilt. And I just I feel like there's, what I'm looking for is some sort of a policy lens to apply to this that allows us to do this without then just opening the floodgates to a giant pile of other requests. And I mean, maybe that just doesn't happen, but certainly a lot of folks are hurting right now. I'd love to get a big break on my taxes as my tenants are struggling to pay their triple net charges and things. So I don't know if we have a specific policy angle that we can apply in this case, or something that that sort of insulates us to some extent from that. But I'll vote for it either way. I just would love to see something.
Okay, Ann?
I like what John said, is maybe adding something to our policy about, transportation access, food access. I mean, access to food, and also, you provide some local food, I think is really important. And hopefully with Milton Meadows coming in, that will help with your patronage. I do know with groceries, very, very low margin. And I also wanted to add that I talked to Ronnie Hardaway, who's on the Lansing Village Board, and he was very supportive of this, as was County Legislator Deborah Dawson's. They both live in that area. So they wanted me to let you know that they also are very supportive of this.
Okay. Anybody else? Andy, I did have a question. Do you foresee getting to a point where the grocery store is viable?
Well, we think it is basically, there is more, but Lansing is a development community. So basically there are additional units being considered for the Lansing Meadows, the Milton Meadows project, senior housing. We've got a number of subdivisions being developed. We also created synergy now for commercial development in that area. So all those things we considered, the business or increase in sales has been showing, but basically it's not enough to offset the additional costs right now. We hope that'll case down the road. Yeah.
Okay.
We're committed to keep it going though.
Okay. Well, certainly in my own experience long ago as the Lansing town attorney for a decade, I understand the goal of building sort of a town center, and this is really an anchor in that. So to John's point, I share his concern but I think that's perhaps part of our policy lens, is that this is part of a larger planning perspective, that we want this grocery store to help provide walkable and local shopping alternatives, so that people don't have to drive a great distance to get their groceries. So I will support. Anybody else? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Laura,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So there, we achieved consensus on that one. Good. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in, Andy.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, board. I appreciate it very much.
Okay. All right, and we have some new business, the Ithacan application. And Heather, would you like to introduce this project?
Sure. I've got James Trasher here and his team, Jared Hutter, working on this project. This is located at 215 East State Street. I'm going to let them give a little bit of an overview of the project, and it sounds like provide some visuals for us. In your packet, you've got the benefits memo, you've got a completed application, as well as a determination of financial need for this project. As we've seen lately, this is another project that has a couple of different aspects to it. There is the parking facility that will be leased back to the city, similar to Asteri. So there is one pilot for that portion, and then a pilot for the remainder of the project. They are providing 10%, effectively half of the affordable housing units on site, and they have asked for consideration of waiving the other half of the fee in their application. And I am going to turn it over to James.
Okay. Good day, board. James Strasher from CHA. I represent the joint venture partnership that's looking to develop at 215 East State Street. As Heather said, Jared Hutter, who is part of that joint venture partnership with Jeff Frimlin, who has developed other properties in Ithaca, namely the Marriott is the other half of that group. And I don't see him on here today, but I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, run through sort of, a quick set of plans showing you what we have gone through with the IURA and the Planning Commission over the last year and a half, 2 years on the project. So I'll share my screen.
Before we I have to go, and I wanted to call attention to the comment that Jennifer made in the chat. I don't know if those are shared publicly, but that should probably be read aloud, and I share her concerns about this project. I think it's a great project. I think we should support it, but.
Okay. Actually, why don't I read Jennifer's comment in? I'm sorry I have to leave. I just wanted to share the following. Whoops.
Did I screw you up?
Yeah, that's okay. That's right.
Okay.
I can still see it.
Yeah.
We
share
saw the comment as well.
Realizing these are not official votes, I'm in favor of the Lansing market request. I am not in favor of the request to waive the workforce housing payment on the Ithacan project without further discussion / understanding, but support moving it to a public hearing. I am supportive of the Arnault project and their request for payment over 3 years if the board agrees. Thanks and have a great night, everyone. Okay.
Yep. And I just want to echo those exact same comments, and unfortunately I have to run. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Trasher, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So once again, thank you. So here's just a cover page with a rendering of what the project would look like along Green Street, main entry, and I'll just run through some of the site plans, but rendering, and you'll see some more of them in the package. So as everyone knows, you've seen the Vicino project which is the 7-story parking structure and affordable units as our neighbor. The hotel is our neighbor on the other side. The Rothschild building, which starts at the Commons or 215 East State Street and works its way over to Green Street, is what we're looking at. We would be taking down the parking garage, which has been deemed in need of a substantial repair by the city. And so we will be demolishing that, buying the air rights from the IURA, and then constructing the parking garage back in place. On the first level along Green Street, we would put in surface level parking that would be accessible to folks coming into what we call the Ithacan, or accessing the existing Rothschild building through entrances in this alleyway. So if people know the building right now, you got restaurants, pizza shop, a couple retail spaces. The entrance off of the Commons would be redone with access straight through to our proposed residential structure and parking structure. On this side of this, we would have a cafe, leasing area, and amenity space for the tower on the first level. As we move up, because of the way the garage needs to attach to the existing garage, we have a mezzanine level that overlooks the space below and out onto Green Street. And then as we go up, this is level 2 commercial space, existing law firm. And I should use that and it's been maybe noted in the newspaper. I know we announced it at the last IURA meeting and the Planning Commission meeting, is at Ithaca College on the first level and on the second level. So Ithaca College here and on this level would be bringing in their physician's assistant school as part of the redevelopment of this area. So putting jobs and students down on the Commons. Parking would be replaced on the second level, tying back into the hotel and the other parking structure. Third level, same scenario, parking tying in with the stairs going back down to the patio area outside of the Marriott on Aurora. And then sometimes it takes a while to generate. These are just repetitive levels that we go over with residential. There's studios, 1s and 2s with separation based on work with the building department at the city of making sure we have proper separation between the different buildings so we have no code related issues. So as in our applications, and these are just repetitive, I'm gonna go to the end because we have prettier pictures when we get to the end. This is the massing of the building, just a section through so you can see the heights. We did obtain a couple variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So these are some of the sections that were asked for by the Planning Board. So this area and the lower where you see the building elevation along East Green Street, that's the Vecino Asteri parking garage, our building tying in to that building. And then the Marriott you can see sitting off to the right. We come to just other sections, looking at it from the Commons. So one of the things that we were also asked to do as part of this project is to spruce up the entrance and the liveliness, because this is a part of a new overlay district of the entrance to the Commons. So this is the main entrance into the building, still the glass front. We're pulling some of the facade forward to activate the Commons as part of the project. And then these are just other renderings produced by BSB, who are our architects. This is a looking at East Green Street. This is a lower level, activating the walkway. So we'll have entrance in, cars coming out. This is the mezzanine level on the upper above the canopy, benches and landscaping brought into the project. Rooftop terrace, one of the things that folks wanted was sight lines because of the height of the building being 140 feet to the lake. Look of the building back at the Commons, so you can see that the architecture ties in to the overall project. And then the last question when we were doing this in Ithaca College came in, this is standing in front, looking back at the existing Rothschild building, entrance, Marriott. We didn't put in the Asteri project because we didn't have their final architectural drawings, but this is what we're proposing to do. As stated, we have 200 units, 10% of them, which would be affordable as part of our IURA agreement. You know, we sat and listened to some of the conversations on your first application. We started a while ago. We understand your policy as it relates to that. But our agreement with the IURA is a minimum of 10% affordable based on a cash on cash return. I'll let Jared speak more to the monetary side of this, but the things that we brought to the table when we were working with the Planning Commission, the IURA, the Common Council, is the reconstruction of the parking garage, where there is no financial benefit to the development of this project. We will take down the existing structure. We will rebuild the parking and really just cover our costs as part of this project. And that is in conversations with Heather, why we looked at this a little bit differently when asking for our tax abatements on this project. And I'll kick it over to Jared now just to talk about, you know, the pro forma and sort of the financial components of this project and why we are coming to you asking for a pilot agreement for this project.
Thank you, James. So, you know, I think what we have here is really a unique situation. You know, when you think about the history of the project, which is ultimately the real importance here, the city has a garage that is, you know, it's falling, it's practically falling down. It is in disrepair. It's crumbling. It is probably an unsafe condition throughout, although I still park there every time I come up there. But we, you know, our conversation with the city on this probably started about 1.5 years, 2 years ago with my partner, Jeff, who, you know, owns the Marriott, owns the Rothschild building, and was looking for some assistance with the residential portion. So we came into the conversation and we're really started our initial talks with the city about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And what we've come up with from a structure standpoint is finding a way, how do we build a new garage? As James said, there's no financial benefit to us, which is why this is ultimately a unique situation. So we're requesting the tax abatement, which is necessary to make this project move forward. And we're requesting the sales tax and mortgage recording, but we're also really requesting here, you know, the consideration of the additional payment in regards to the affordable housing. And, you know, similar to the other projects that have been discussed, although I don't want to compare us to that, you know, when we first started talking with the city, it was just a 10% component. And that was what, you know, the original model was really based off of. And having an additional payment in there now is tricky, given the way construction costs have really shot up over the last, you know, 6-7 months here. As materials have, you know, throughout this pandemic, you know, one of the byproducts is material costs have gone up due to scarcity. And unfortunately, you know, labor has not normalized to where we were hoping it would ultimately be. We want to move forward on this project. And what we're really asking for is just a little bit of help here from you guys, not just for us as the developer, but really for the city's sake, because this is going to allow the garage to be redeveloped and delivered back to the city for use by everyone who patronizes the area.
Okay. Let's see, we do have some questions. Oops, let me just get Anne.
My hand was up from before. I might have some comments, but not right this second.
Okay, Martha.
I got a couple comments on, can you hear me? All right. On the design first, it was a little hard to see. Are there windows on all 4 sides of the building?
Yes, there's windows on all 4 sides of the building. So I
Okay,
can go back and show if you need to see it.
No,
But we
it's
can also
okay.
provide the packet between now and then to Heather, and she can distribute to the board so you can see the same packet that the other boards have seen as well as it relates to the project.
That would be great.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I assume there must be if you had apartments, you have to have windows. Okay.
Yep.
And it sort of became evident but on facing the commons, it's the building is 2 stories.
Correct.
And then so there's a setback before you get to the taller building, right?
Yeah, just for clarification, that is a separate building that the Ithacan as the residential portion and the garage, the public garage will have access through, but that is a separate building, separate ownership. And we are not asking for any abatement, any consideration or anything for that building. The benefits that we are looking for here, that we're requesting, are solely related to the single development of the garage and the residential portion above.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I know we're kind of rushed because it's so late, so I appreciate that. About the garage, so you talk about 150 spaces, but as I get it, only 118 are open to the public. 32 on the surface are for residents of the building. Is that right?
No, so 118 in the parking garage levels will come through the existing gates, to the parking garage, get their card, go in. The 32 on the lower levels will be some other means or methods in terms of if they're metered parking or other stuff that can be utilized for either building tenants, people in the commons. It's really surface level parking that, with, I'll use Grubhub, FedEx deliveries, people coming in. It's more of those quick in and out type of trips versus people that are coming.
On our
in.
packet, page 20, it says that'll be, the garage on East Green serves 32 new street level of parking spaces of parking for the residential component.
Yes, so to clarify that, the 118 spaces are across the 2 levels. That is going back to the city. That is, I don't have the exact number in front of me, what's there today, but effectively that is replacing in kind what is there now. The additional 32 spaces do not exist today. And those are not going, the city will not control those. Those will, as James pointed out, those will be in and out type spaces. But those will be, owned by the development, the residential development that's there.
Are they open to the public?
That's the plan, yes. We're not asking for, when we ask for the portion to be waived on the parking garage, we're asking for the portion on levels 2 and 3, not the privately owned portion.
Okay, so the value of the privately owned portion is part of the whole project value?
That is correct.
Okay, maybe that helps. I mean, I also see on page 34 mentions 161 parking spaces. All right, maybe it's,
Page 34 of your document, or because there might, as we have gone through the process with, I'll just say, the city planning board and how handicap parking spaces and unloading zones, because I'll just use, there's agreements between the city and the Marriott that we have to also deal with as part of this in terms of unloading zones and other things in adjacency. So some of that has shifted. So if there's a typographical error in our application, or I just didn't clean it up, but it's 118 plus 32.
Yes, on page 11 of the application, which is page 34 of the agenda packet, under section 10, other, it should be 150 spaces, not 161.
Yeah, that's my error, and I apologize.
okay, so it is actually 150
Yep.
public spaces. Okay. All right. I do have other questions, but happy to let other people go if there are other questions.
Heather, did you have your hand up? Or was that on that? Okay. Martha,
I was going to clarify the parking spaces, and I think the applicant team did that.
okay. I think you're up, Martha. I don't see anybody else's hand up at this point.
Okay, I find it comical maybe to say the city asked for 10% affordable housing, because when they were telling the IDA what to do, the city said it needed to be 20% affordable housing. So that actually was kind of the basis of, or had an influence on developing our housing policy. Personally, I would be just fine with spreading the payment out, but as discussed, I'm not okay with waiving half of the fee for the fact that it's only doing 10%. Then I'm actually curious, and this comes up in the next one too, Heather. Am I right? Has the Ithaca Green Building Code actually been approved yet? Is it in place?
It has not been approved yet. It is still in draft form. So for applicants right now, because our policy says you have to meet the 2025 requirements of the code, we're requesting that they meet the as drafted 2025 requirements today.
Okay, because normally we don't give abatements for meeting your requirements.
No, they're not meeting the 2020 requirements. They're meeting the requirements that would kick in 2025. So we're essentially, that was the entire intent of the policy as the enhanced energy policy as adopted, that applicants would need to meet the requirements that will kick in 2025 in the city building code. We're not incentivizing them to meet the current, what we had thought would be the current requirement. However, the policy hasn't been adopted yet.
Right, so that I'm okay with that, since they're not required by code to meet that yet. At such point, as it becomes the code, I wouldn't think abatements would be appropriate.
Our policy says that after 2025, we'll have to revisit it. It was clear that we are not going to provide any incentives for just meeting what code requires.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great, because I wasn't sure whether it can't keep up with the city code development. I want to know about the physician assistance program. When is that program going to start?
Go ahead, Jared.
Go.
So Ithaca College, so currently there's a building permit for the build out of that space. Ithaca College wants to be in there in January, take over the space in January 2021 for their build out, so they can have it ready for next school year. So
they'll start the program in the fall of 2021?
Yes.
Actually, I think they've already started the policy of the program up on campus. They need space, an additional space and better space. And so this is where they're looking to relocate and energize the commons.
Okay, and I mean, it's great. And so I'm interested in the fact that you want to hold aside apartments for students. So it appears, would that be 20? Are there going to be at least 20 students in that program?
There's 60 students per class in that program as they ramp up.
Okay, and so are those students going to be allowed to pay lower rent?
So we anticipate it has not been finalized yet, but the structure that we've been talking with Ithaca College about is a lower rent number, because they cannot necessarily afford, the same market rents, here or anywhere else. So we're looking at, sort of a bulk lease and a bulk number to be able to bring in a lot of those young residents to the program and to allow them to live right there. It's a benefit to everybody, because they'll be there, at an affordable rate, able to patronize all the businesses that are there. And that would be, potentially 20 to 30% of the entire building.
So is IC going to subsidize the rent?
Can't comment on that. I don't know for sure. I don't believe so. I can tell you that as the owners of the units, we will be getting less rent than if we put it as market rate. That I know for sure. Who's exactly paying that? I don't want to, misrepresent that right now.
All right. And then on page 4 of your application, which is 27 of our packet, if the applicant can't obtain financial assistance, what will be the impact? And it talks about potential condemnation of the Rothschild building during reconstruction of the garage. I'm confused. Are you not, are you building around the Rothschild building and?
So the way the building exists right now, Ithaca Properties LLC, who owns the Rothschild building, owns the ground rights and the air rights up to a certain level, and the building sits under the parking garage. If this project wasn't to move forward, the Rothschild building wouldn't fix, Ithaca Properties LLC would not fix the garage. The city would be on the hook for removing that section. And in order to do so, they would have to, quote unquote, condemn that portion of the Rothschild building underneath the garage so they could demolish. So that's why this process has taken a little bit longer between the IURA and the city, because of who owns the ground, who owns the air, purchasing the air rights, redeveloping, and them coming up with the 10% goal in our IURA agreement. So we have an agreement that was just memorialized at a meeting, what's today? Yesterday, with the IURA, with the 10% goal, which has been out there for a while. So I know the city has a 20% goal, but because of the parking garage, it got reduced down to 10% just because of the financial burdens. Because these guys aren't going and looking for tax credits like other projects have. They're just reducing rent. So your pilot agreement that you're putting in place really is helping subsidize the developer for putting in affordable units versus going and getting other monies from other public sources. So you are the benefit here, and they're just taking a less return over the life of this. And other people are asking for 30-year pilots. We're asking for the energy abatement one, but the life of the affordable process goes on for 30 years as part of the agreement. So
James, I would add one more thing to that. One of the tricky parts, and obviously from the condemnation aspect, if the city went and had to redevelop the garage themselves, as we've gone into this with our contractor, I can tell you the demolition and removal of this garage with the building, effectively wrapped around it is extremely complicated and extremely expensive, more than we had necessarily budgeted for. Now that's on us, but I just want to add that in there, that if the city has to go do it, I mean, it is a very expensive endeavor to go about this. So, it's one of the other reasons that we are looking for, just a little bit of help here to make this.
Okay, I mean, I appreciate that. I understand it's a complex project. So you're saying the IUR, this will be guaranteed 30-year affordability, and the IURA will be doing the income qualification.
Yes.
Okay, just one final question. And actually, look, I mean, I'm 90%, with what you want to do, but it's this waiver of the payment I'm not okay on. But, if the city, seems like the city could have been here or written a letter to explain why they back this deal, but okay. Finally, just on page 10 of your application, 33 of the packet, I'm afraid the diversity, what your answer on diversity is really not what we're looking for at all. So I hope you can work with Heather on that and improve that and make it compliant with our policy, perhaps by the public hearing or certainly by the next time we meet.
what page is that in the application, Heather?
10.
Oh, the management team will hire the most qualified people within the local market and nationally that can perform the positions required for leasing, management, and operation of the new building and facility.
That's not what we're looking for.
What are you looking for? I'm just asking. So, because right here, Jared Hutter is the guy who's going to go out and work with.
Okay, it's 20 of 5. Heather can fill you that in on that offline, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there's a few different things that it probably would be beneficial to have continuing discussions on while we go forward with the public hearing. And I think we're going to have a healthy discussion at our next IDA meeting. I get that sense. But perhaps now we could vote to consider putting this to a public hearing. Members of the IDA, are we ready to proceed with that? Yeah. Could I get a motion to send it?
This is Ann. I'm just concerned that with our last, one of the other projects we talked about today, people had concerns that we hadn't ironed out a lot of things before we took it to a public hearing.
Okay.
So I would prefer to wait on public hearing.
Okay, Laura?
Yeah, I agree with Ann on this. I have some real questions and reservations about this that I would rather we have further information and discussion on before we move it to a public hearing.
Okay. What's this? I'd like to get a sense of the IDA here. Martha and Mike, what do you think?
Well, I could support moving it forward without that without waiver of the affordable housing fee of 500,000.
Okay. Mike?
I'd support Martha with that effort.
Yeah, I agree with Laura and Ann that I feel uncomfortable that John and Jennifer aren't participating at this point. And I feel like this is going to be a very difficult conversation on this waiver. So, yeah, maybe
Well, if we're not going for it, we should be extremely clear about what we're looking for so that they can have it for the next one.
yeah. James, what would you prefer?
It really comes, as Jared is 50% of this deal, so the buck stops with him. So
I mean, look, if you would like my input there, we'd like to go to a public hearing, and to be frank, I don't think we should be penalized because some board members couldn't stay for the whole meeting. I mean, we've hung in here for the last almost 2.5 hours, whatever it's been. If the board members, why should the applicant get penalized?
Rich, I wouldn't hold this up for the sake of improving the diversity policy. If there are things specifically, people, maybe we can get rid of the screen here. So we can
I just have a question for you. The worst case scenario is that we're asking for a waiver of the entire payment. If it comes back in, just like other things.
Clear, we're asking for a waiver of half a payment.
Yeah, half a payment.
10% on site.
So that's the worst case scenario. So if the public is going to speak, it's not like we said, hey, we're trying to do something, then asking for more. We're asking for the most. And if the public says no and you say no, then it's to the joint venture folks that they say, hey, we understand, and $2,500 times 200 units is $500,000. Do you agree to it? Yes. But I think the public hearing allows people to comment on that and allows you to consider their comments based on quote unquote the worst case scenario.
Okay. Martha and Mike, you have your hands up?
I do.
Can we get rid of the screen? I don't think we need this.
Oh, yeah.
Design zone.
Rich?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing that gentleman just said. Actually, I don't have a problem moving it to the public hearing. I mean, it's not like Jen and any other board member who wants to weigh in won't have the opportunity to do so. And this really just, let's hear from the public. I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Martha, did you have something further?
You mean move it forward, including waiver of the $500,000 fee?
Yeah, I mean, if we move it with the waiver and the public comes and says, what the heck are you doing? That's a terrible idea. Or they'll come in and say, we're okay with that. Or nobody will show up at all. So, but then we still all get to weigh in on it. It's not like this is the last, it's not like this is it. This is just move it ahead, move it forward.
All right, I guess I would support that with a caveat that I am going to vote against it if that's, you know, at the final consideration. Just, I would be voting to support only with pending hearing the diversity policy improvement and, for
The
this,
outcome of the discussion on the waiver of the fee. Yeah, I think this addresses some of the issue I raised with our prior discussion, that we shouldn't have surprises. So yeah, if we're going forward to a public hearing, we're not endorsing the waiver. We're not saying we're against it. And Heather, if you have more financial information you want to share with us on this issue, that might be really helpful. And of course, on the diversity policy. with that said, Ann and Laura, is it okay to take a vote on going to public hearing?
I'm okay with it, and this is just to our members of the IDA, then seeing that we might still have some things to discuss, just not to be holding that against us because we're moving it
Right.
on to hear. I'm perfectly okay about hearing what the public has to say on this.
Okay, Laura?
Well, Heather had her hand up, and so I don't know if you had clarifying.
Just wanted to clarify on the diversity policy. The IDA's diversity policy clearly states that if there is an owner-occupied building with their own employees in the building or people that they're paying directly, that entity needs to comply with the diversity policy. So this applicant will be hiring a third-party management company to manage the property. As we've done with other projects that have come to the IDA, if there is not a direct applicant relationship, they're not required to comply with that diversity policy. I know that might not be what you want to hear, but that was discussed quite significantly when we adopted the policy, that it was very difficult to require a third party or a retail tenant or a commercial tenant that we don't know who that is yet to comply with this policy. So that was the way that it was adopted. If you want them to clarify their language about, how they're going to choose that management company, I'm happy to work with them to do that. So that was that. The other thing that I was going to ask Russ, if you can just clarify. So there's an application with a proposed incentive structure. If we go to a public hearing and then come back and decide that, we're going to change this, we're going to change that and approve it, does there need to be another public hearing?
No, the public hearing requirements under the general municipal law, not to play the lawyer guy, is that you have to give a general functional description of the project and the proposed financial assistance. And if there's a material deviation from that between the time that we have the public hearing and we come back to the board, then we'll have to consider whether or not we have to have another public hearing. So we have to have a general sense as to, okay, here's the project, here's what they're spending, here's what they're asking for, and here's what's going to potentially be considered by the board. If there's a material, again, deviation or change in the scope of the project, goes from 10,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet, or the pilot goes from, $20,000 a year to $40,000 a year, then that's something we'd have to consider. But as far as the 10% waiver on the housing component, to me, is something that is not going to increase. It will potentially decrease. Therefore, I have no problem with going to a public hearing.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Are we ready to take it to a vote? Oh, no, we're not. Martha?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Heather. Maybe we could get the copy of the diversity policy sent back around to us. I will note that on page 16 of the application, Jeffrey signed this application, and he's part of the community. And if it just means joining the diversity consortium, which is one part of our policy, I don't think that's too much to ask. I would like this to be given a serious look instead of the look it's been given here. I also would point out that the incentives aren't even identified. I'm looking at packet page 30, and value of incentives is empty.
It's in the last pages of the application, as is, we do generally just attach it at the back. They might not have said see attached.
Okay. All right.
Laura?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Rich, you commented at the beginning of the meeting that we typically don't get many comments, public comments. And because it sounds like there are questions and reservations, I have real reservations about waiving half of the fee. And I think this is the first time we've seen the visuals on this project. The rents are set at 80% of AMI. There's a distinction Some people have been drawing comparisons to the earlier projects we were discussing. Those rents are set at 50 and 60% of AMI. So I just don't know how much opportunity there is if we take this to public hearing. I want it to be clear that that is not an indication that we are approving of the incentives being requested. So that's why I suggested waiting and going to the public hearing, because I don't know if it would be better if we flushed out some of the concerns we have before going to public hearing.
Yeah, and I understand your concern, Laura, but that's why I asked the question of the developers. And they'd like to take their chances. They want to move the project forward. So that, you know.
We understand with any project that when you go to a public hearing, you can vote in favor of an action or against an action. It's just part of the public process where you get input, and then you are still the determining board. And there's, once public hearing is closed, typically there's conversation between applicant and board of, hey, if you don't want to waive that 10%, Jared Hutter and Jeff Rimland will be at that next meeting, and the statement can be, okay, we can live with that, and we make that $500,000 payment and the Diversity Act. So all those things can be worked out. It's just, we would like to get to the public hearing, get public input, more board input, and then let you make the determination of if you feel this is good, bad, or indifferent, and we'll provide more information between now and then, and we'd love to work with you on this.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is Russ again, quickly. Going to a public hearing certainly does not require this board to do anything. We could have a public hearing, and then if things change after the public hearing and we determine, or I determine that legally, hey, look, there's been a material change, we have to go back and have another hearing, so be it. We'll have to do that.
Okay. Martha, you had one?
Yeah, thanks, Heather, for sending me to the pages after the application. I get to the page on the taxes abated for the garage, and it says applicant is requesting a
What page you're on, Martha?
packet page 43. They're looking for the pilot so that there's zero taxes paid on the garage, excluding the land. So what does that mean? Is the value of the land part of the housing project anyway? And because the garage is really just 2 and 3, level 2 and 3?
Yes, just like we did with the Asteri project, as we just carved out the portion of the project that will be leased to the city for public parking. Everything else is part of the housing project.
And to your earlier, your earlier question, as you can see here, that value is only based upon those 118 spaces, not the privately owned portion of the garage. Even though that privately owned portion will be open to the public.
Okay,
I could just make one other comment if you guys are the point when you're comparing our projects to others. I think it's important to remember that yes, our rents here are set differently. We didn't set those rent parameters. Those were given to us by the city in terms of what rent levels that they were looking for, because the 50 and 60%, there's a lot of that being built in the area at this point. We were given those numbers. We didn't pick where it was. And most importantly, I would tell you that it's not just the affordable housing component that's the benefit to the city. It's the cost to rebuild that garage. That is, the big public benefit here is the replacement of that garage. I look at the affordable as it's a great benefit, but it's really over and above, what we're able to do to help the community.
So
Okay.
in a sense,
Hold on.
maybe we should
Martha,
be
hold on one
considering.
second. Mike, could you go on mute? Thanks. Okay. Go ahead, Martha.
I know we can't do this, but maybe we should be considering abating the city's taxes, but not the counties or the school districts. City's getting a lot out of this. It would have been nice if there were some support shown, but okay. Aside from Laura being here, what she has to be.
Okay. Are we prepared to vote on scheduling, moving this to public hearing? Do I have a motion to do that?
I'll move that.
Martha seconds.
Okay.
Mike, did you have something?
No, I moved or seconded it. That's fine.
Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, are we ready to vote? Laura,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So progress.
Thank you. We appreciate
Okay.
it. We'll see you next month.
Thank you very
Yes,
much,
I-
everybody. Have a great
Enjoy
day.
Thanksgiving.
Can I ask one quick question? I forgot to ask earlier.
Certainly.
Will there be a way to go from the Commons all the way through
Yes.
to get
Yes.
to the other street? Okay, maybe I
Yes.
missed that.
I don't think we highlighted it as well, but there's absolutely connection between the garage straight out to the commons.
Correct.
From the garage, but, okay, so
You're standing on, you can also go, if you're a pedestrian on Green Street, you can get through to the commons as well.
Correct.
okay, and that will be clearly marked. I mean, it's going to be fairly easy and not just you can, but it's going to be very, very easy to do that.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. We'll see you in a bit. And yes, have a good Thanksgiving.
You as well. Thanks.
Okay. And our next order of business is Arno Ithaca 2 LLC, 430, 444 West State Street. Heather, do you want to introduce this application?
Sure. We've got Peter Dugo and Ian Hunter and Marissa Riley with us from the project team. They're going to give an overview of the project. You have in your packet the community benefits overview, the financial need memo, the full application with the proposed tax incentive structure at the end. This applicant is applying for that financial need, that 10-year incentive with the enhanced energy incentive layered on top of it. They are requesting an additional year of 100% abatement along with paying the fee for the affordable housing over a 3-year period. The additional amount of abatement is roughly half of the affordable housing payment, equal to based on what we know about today's tax rates and what we're projecting in terms of evaluation. So I will go ahead and let the team give you that project overview.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Dugo, president of Arnett Realty Corporation. I'm just going to give you a 30-second about who we are, and then Ian's going to take you through the project. So Arnett Realty, we're a real estate developer, property manager. We're a local small business. We are located in Chemung County. Been here for over 100 years. Recently, the last few years, our board decided that we needed to grow, and Ithaca was determined that was a market that we thought it was essential for us to grow into. We started doing a project here on Inlet Island that opened just about a year ago. This project that we're presenting in front of you is our second one. I just want to say, looking forward to working with you all on this project and hopefully many, many more to come. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ian and he can walk you through the project. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We've got a quick slide deck. We were planning for about a 10-minute presentation, but given that we're now well into our third hour of the meeting, I'm going to see if I can't do it in 5. So if I skip over something that looks interesting in the slides, let me know, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So hopefully everyone can see the screen. This is a quick rendering. Have no fear, we've got more renderings in the presentation, so I won't dwell on this one for too long. In terms of an overview of the project, we're looking to build kind of a mixed use urban infill project. From an aesthetic point of view, where kind of the design takes from the history of industry that both this specific property and the area as a whole had. And overall, that's our goal to kind of enhance the vibrancy and diversity of the existing neighborhood. Bottom line is we're bringing new housing to an area that hasn't seen much new residential development in the West End neighborhood. So just for a little bit of context, this is the location of the site. It's right at the corner of Corn Street and State Street. And you can see here that the parcel is a fairly unique shape, and that was something that was taken into account when we were doing the design. In terms of the West End neighborhood, we view it as really the connection between the Commons, which has long been what people think of as downtown Ithaca, and the waterfront. And so we're looking to build a project that kind of is hopefully catalytic in that it kind of generates new economic development and opportunity in this portion of town. In terms of what folks may be more familiar with, one of the current tenants at our site, Mimi's Attic, and a few of the former tenants at our site, Mama Goose, which was in the building that's shown on the left here, as well as Bishop's Carpet 1, which would have been to the right of where this photo was taken. But I did want to just kind of call attention to not only the condition of the existing building, the kind of hodgepodge of structures that currently occupy the site, but also this kind of surface parking condition and 2 curb cuts, which create some kind of what I'll describe as sub-ideal pedestrian conditions along State Street. So this is a quick overview of the project team, certainly some familiar faces from the area. I'm sure you all know Tatum Engineering, T.G. Miller, and Trowbridge Wolf Michaels. Our project architect for this project is Eric Colbert, who actually was raised in Ithaca, but now practices out of Washington, D.C. A quick overview of the proposed building features. So again, the focus here is bringing new housing to the West End and adding nearly 130 new housing units. In addition to that, some of our design choices include things like trying to adaptively reuse the existing brick facade of the Mama Goose building. And of course, from an energy perspective, which is what we're here to talk about, that enhanced energy abatement, we do plan to exceed the Ithaca Green Building Code energy goals for 2025. Quick overview of our development program: around 4,800 square feet of new commercial or retail space along State Street, 49 new parking spaces also on the ground floor, and then rounded out with resident amenities that'll kind of support the 129 new residential units up above. Some building features we're planning to include: one is a small outdoor plaza. This would take the place of the raised patio that's currently in front of the Mama Goose building. That raised patio and the fence that surrounds it make it feel more like a private space. We want to lower that to grade and create more of a public-private kind of plaza accessible to anyone. We do have a rather large bike room planned for the property. There are some green roofs that will be amenities for the building residents. And then, as I mentioned before, the kind of improved pedestrian environment along State Street. So this is the first rendering that we had shown. Kind of the main design feature here you can see is the preservation of a little more than 2 of the sides of the existing Mama Goose facade. And this was kind of the one architectural piece of the existing structure that we felt was worth saving. And you can see there that kind of the new building above it steps back, and that helps to highlight the existing architecture. This is a view from State Street, a slightly different angle. The things that I would point out here is the plans for the commercial space are on the right-hand or east side of the building, directly adjacent to the State Diner, with everything from kind of that 444 canopy you see there to the left or the west as housing the building amenity spaces. You can also see in this rendering, as you saw in the last one, that kind of outdoor small plaza that we're planning in front of the existing building. Taking folks quickly around the building, this view is from Corn Street. Just to orient you, that white building right there is the former Wiley Dry Cleaner building, which our property abuts. You can see there we're in between our building and the existing Wiley building. We're planning to activate that alley and for it to be used as more of a pedestrian and bicycle entrance for the property. The other design feature that I'll call your attention to in kind of the upper left here in the rendering is the roof deck on the 5th floor, which will overlook Seneca Street and be an amenity for our residents. This is the final rendered view we have for you this evening. This is the Seneca Street facade, which will serve as kind of the primary vehicular ingress and egress for the property for access to those 49 parking spaces. There will also be a separate pedestrian path. You can see there on the left-hand side. So it will be, pedestrians will not be expected to use the same routes as vehicles when entering the building from this perspective. The next few slides focus on kind of our green building and sustainability efforts with this project. So the first goal there, exceeding the Ithaca Green Building Code goals for 2025, is of course the qualification for the enhanced energy abatement, but we're also going above and beyond that. We've got approval from NYSERDA to participate in their multifamily new construction program. We plan to proceed with that. We're also, of course, meeting all of the Tompkins County energy recommendations for new construction, as well as kind of being in dialogue with Andrea at Tompkins County Business Energy Advisors, who's helping us to make sure that this is as efficient a building as possible. These are some checklists of the green building features that we're including in our building, and I promise I won't read all of them to you. I'll just highlight a few as we go through. Of course, using simple things like using Energy Star appliances, WaterSense fixtures, but we're also, in addition to using heat pumps for heating and cooling, are planning to do an air to water heat pump for the domestic hot water system, as well as making this an all electric building, with the one exception being that should one of our commercial tenants need gas for cooking, that would be the only exception to this all electric building. Next slide. We're working with our energy consultant, who also happens to be our MEP engineer, Tatum, to do a kind of whole building energy model, and that'll ensure that our design meets all the expected code and other requirements. In addition, the lighting will be all LED. We'll use the required occupancy sensors, and our lighting power density, we're targeting at least 30 or 40% less than code. So that's a quick summary of kind of the building from a high level. Happy to talk about any of the details, but I did also want to kind of dive into what our request is. So from an abatement perspective, as Heather mentioned, we're requesting one additional year of 100% abatement for the property tax on this, or the property tax increase, more specifically for this parcel. And the reason for doing that, I would say, is our desire to make the Community Housing Development Fund payments, which is our second ask, over the first 3 years of the property's operation. So, you know, we agree with the IDA's opinion that housing affordability is a big issue in Tompkins County, and we are happy to make a contribution to help address that. But from a financial point of view, our request with regard to the CHDF payment is that we be allowed to pay that $645,000 in total over 3 years in annual payments of $215,000.
Okay.
And this is, sorry, Rich, this is the last slide.
That you were wrapping up. Go ahead.
This is the last slide. It just shows what the typical enhanced abatement schedule with financial need looks like there in the second column, what our proposed schedule would be, and how that lines up with our plan for the annual Community Housing Development Fund payment. And that is it. So take it away, Rich.
Okay. Questions? Right. Since you've been here and presumably awake, you've heard some discussion about the whole issue of the Community Housing Development Fund and how it's applied. I anticipate that we will have a lot of those same discussions on this project, particularly because of your request. I guess I'd like to ask the members of the IDA are here, but are they comfortable sending this to public hearing on the same conditions as we just talked about with the Ithacan project?
Yes, I would be.
Martha?
You mean, in other words, not promising that we agree to that level of abatement?
We are not making promises. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, and Anne? Just,
Yes.
okay. So that wasn't a vote, but, okay. I want to make sure, questions. Martha, you have your hand up?
Yeah, the way you just showed the energy the abatement schedule, you had 2 years at 100% abatement, right?
That was showing what the typical enhanced energy abatement with financial need would be. It would be 2 years at 100%, but we are requesting 3.
I thought the energy abatement was 3 years at 100. Heather, you're muted. You're muted, Heather.
The abatement for non-residential projects for the enhanced energy is 3 years at 100%, but for residential projects, it's 2 years at 100%. That's the new policy based on the recommendations from Tatum.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm not inclined to essentially cut the housing subsidy in half, but the project looks great. It's, you know, really, really handsome. Really done a nice job. I'm confused. Does the Wiley building stay? It wasn't clear.
The Wiley building is not part of our property. And as yet, we don't know of anyone who has plans to redevelop it.
But maybe I misunderstood. It's okay. It's a detail, but it looked like, so it's still there in the middle of the parking lot?
So that open parking lot that you see in the rendering is their parking lot. It's not our parking lot. The one point where our two properties do intersect is that alley between the buildings. We own the majority of that alley, but they own a small portion of it, so it remains as an access alley.
Our parking is on our ground floor. Oh, my lights just went out. Sorry. Our parking is on our ground floor underneath the residential floors above.
Okay, and I do really, the look of it is great, using the existing facade, and then the expansion is very nice. Is that it leaves the State Diner intact? Is that it goes up to the State Diner, right?
Correct. The State Diner is also a separately owned parcel and is not part of the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else with questions? I'll jump in with a comment. I like the design. You said you're going to keep the facade of the Mama Goose building, so the exterior, but you're going to basically rebuild the inside of it? That's the plan?
That's correct. Yeah, the only part that will be adaptively reused is 2 of the existing facades and a portion of the 3rd.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote on sending it to public hearing? Ann?
I want to thank you for the extensive energy upgrades or design features of it. And one question about, you said there's a bike room? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have, as part of our amenities plan, there's a 39 bike private storage room. Private meaning it's for the tenants of the building. There's also plans for public bike parking, which will be on State Street and are part of the improvements we're making to the streetscape. And that will house 8 bikes.
It'd be nice if that was included maybe in the city code, that that there was room for that. Are there going to be any charging capabilities for cars?
Currently, we don't have plans for electrical vehicle charging stations. However, we have planned to size the service such that if they did need to be added in the future, due to resident or tenant demand, they could be.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Could I get a motion to send this to public hearing? Martha moves. Do I have a second? Laura seconds. Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? We ready to vote? All right, Laura?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes, and I'm really glad you're using the county's Business Energy Advisors Program. That's great.
Okay, Ann?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so this will go to public hearing. I'm sorry to keep you here so long today. We've certainly had a long meeting, but thank you for your presentation, and we'll see you at the public hearing and beyond. So,
Thank you so
Okay.
much. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
all right.
Thanks, everyone.
And then moving on, I see next item is chair's report. I only have a half an hour of stuff I just want to share. Actually, I will save my chair's report. Let's and Heather, perhaps we could save the discussion of the third quarter 2020 budget report, unless there's something urgent there. And if there was a motion on the, we've got the Construction Labor Committee minutes, but we have minutes from our October 14th, 2020. Could I get a motion to approve those? Martha moves and seconds. Thank you. Any questions or comments on those minutes?
Yes, I
Laura.
do.
Either one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought Annie said that there needed to be more detail.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. But Anne, go ahead. Sounds like you
Yeah.
were going.
For the IDA last committee meeting, John and I had brought up about the Carpenter Park development being considered as 1 or 3 projects. So I would just like to ask that be put in, that we had a discussion about that.
Okay. Anything further? Martha?
Yeah, actually, I would ask that we defer doing the minutes, and if Ina could go back and pull some more language out, especially because John isn't here, and then bring us a revised set of minutes for the next meeting.
I think that's fine. I have no objection. Anybody else? Let's wait on that until our next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other business to come before the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency? We ready to consider adjourning for now? Right? Laura moves. Do I have a second? Ann seconds. All right. Show of hands on adjourning. We are, and I'm assuming Mike is with us on this one. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Sorry for the
Thank
long.
you.
Everybody.